Hi, everyone. Welcome to my LinkedIn Live. My name is Yekemi, and I'm in Aberdeen, Scotland. I am a co-founding director at Dukaru, and we are a sales enablement consultancy, and we work with a lot of companies in the energy and tech sector. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Charlene. She's based in Canada, so it's really early for her. It's 4 p.m. for me, but it's 9 a.m. over there, isn't it, Charlene?
Yes, that's correct.
So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I would love for you to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you do right now at Clem Geo-Energy.
Hi there, and good morning, good evening. My name is Charlene Beckie. I'm currently the CEO of Clem Geo-Energy Corp in Calgary, Alberta, in Western Canada. And yes, I've been working in the renewable energy space for about 6 years after having worked the majority of my career in oil and gas. So it was a big transition from being a senior geophysicist and putting myself out there in the renewable energy space. So it's been very interesting.
And exciting. I remember when we first met and we had a chat probably a couple of months ago now. It's just so inspiring because I do know a lot of people who are looking to transition from oil and gas into different spaces, including renewable. And yeah, they found it quite challenging. And I think what you've done is admirable, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So you mentioned that you started as a what is it geophysicist. So can you tell us a little bit about your career background? What did you study at school and what companies did you work for? Tell us a little bit.
Sure, I'll tell you a little bit. It's a long story, so hopefully you have enough time. No, I actually started my university career pretty much right out of high school, and I did psychology. And I did a business minor, so I had some background in business also from my
Mm,
education. And from there, I did a lot of traveling. Went all the way around the Pacific Circle, traveling Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, down to Singapore. And then we crossed over into Australia, worked there for 3 months. And then we traveled for another 4 months. So we were gone in total about 14 months, which was a really amazing, unique experience. And when I got back to Canada, I didn't want to work an office job. So I actually I was a third female to be hired by Schlumberger Giga in
mm,
the field office. So I worked there for 2.5 years and decided it was time to settle back into Calgary and figure out a career path. So my family was actually in the oil and gas sector, and they actually refurbished and built trailers for
mm,
the industrial sector, which was really great. And then I went back to school actually at that point. I was like, well, what can I do? I'm going to try and be a geophysicist. So I went back to school, did a fast track degree in geophysics, graduated in 1998, and worked primarily as a geophysicist, but also in the IT sector. So
mm,
I learned a lot about computers and things like that, and worked my way up in different companies and internationally and in Western Canada in the oil and gas sector. And it's a great experience. I loved working a technical role. It was challenging at times, but it was a great experience overall. But the challenge with the oil and gas sector, the ups and downs in
yeah.
Western Canada, we really don't control the price points of oil and gas. So dealing with a lot of that was tough, and some of the things I saw in the oil and gas sector too, I wasn't too impressed with. Plus, I saw the degradation of the environment generally over time since I
Mm,
was a small child here, just the degradation of the air quality and things like that. And I thought, I want to do something different. I want to do something maybe better, something that I'm going to be super proud of. And so about 6 years ago, I decided to put my money into my own business, and starting in 2016, I started actually challenging myself to build industrial scale, or I guess
mm,
utility scale projects from the ground up. And so that's what I've been doing since. So we have 3 projects that we've got going on in Alberta, and then now 2 projects in Atlantic Canada. So I'm really super engaged, and yeah, I've done a lot of things in my business. So having worked from a technical role, I've had to put myself out there, talk about my business, engage in business, learn as much as I can about the business. And so, yeah, it's been really interesting and challenging. And building utility scales projects it's not an easy thing to do. So we're in development stage in all these projects. But I did do some traveling along the way. I spent some time in China. I spent some time in Europe, and was able to engage a group out of Europe called Abo Wind, who I partnered with at the end of 2018 on one project, and we upscaled that project from 16 megawatts now to 100 megawatts. And in my portfolio of project management, I have over 200 megawatts of projects, and yeah, getting to the $1 billion mark.
Oh, wow. Exciting. And there's so much there we're going to unpack. If anyone's listening now, yeah, we all can unpack it. So if anyone's listening now or later, feel free to just drop us a comment. Just let us know that you're watching. If you've got a question for myself or Charlene, please feel free to put that in the comment box and I'll pull those up and make sure that we get to them. And if you can tell us where you're watching from, that would be great as well. Really, really exciting. So um, going from oil and gas into what you currently do now, what were some of the, I guess, skills and experience that you felt really helped you as you turned into the role of CEO at Clem Geo-Energy? What were some skills that were easily transferable?
Yeah, I had to learn that the hard way a little bit, but I was one of the first WIRE speakers, which is the Women in Renewable Energy groups across Canada here in Calgary, and that was when I really put down on paper some of those ideas. So obviously I had the technical skills. I realized I had communication skills. I didn't understand how powerful communication can be. I did have some definite gaps in financing and such, and just general knowledge about the industry. So those I tried to fill in with courses, and generally you can do it different ways. You can build a team up which fills in those gaps, or you can try and learn as much as you can. For me, I wanted to keep my overhead low, and I also wanted to learn as much about the business so that when I started hiring people and such, that I knew exactly what their job roles would be, and the time frame it would take them to do those jobs and things like that. So it was really important for me to learn everything I could, and I knew my whole thing in life is learning and growing. So that's really what I wanted to focus on in my career.
It's really interesting that you've mentioned communication, and that's usually an area that highly technical people yeah, they tend not to be great at communicating. And you bringing it up as something that you obviously got better at, and you identified it as an area that you wanted to upskill yourself in. Could you tell us a little bit about why communication was such a big part of being able to succeed with your new venture?
Well, for me, I was very introverted. So when I started my business, it was even hard for me to call suppliers. I would go days like trying to prepare for a call with even a supplier, right? Or a consultant. But through positive communications and things like that, I did start to build up my self-confidence. So basically I started from ground zero. Like, I don't know how many people are as introverted as I am, but now today I can speak about my business. I can do the things I need to do and communicate. So it's huge. It's huge. Building up your confidence and building up your communication skills are really big in any business, and even your network. I've got an amazing network now. People, when I was in oil and gas, people said, well, you should network, and I would, I'd go for coffee with people, but it was always in a comfortable space, right? It was always with people I worked with. They were comfortable to work with. So I never pushed myself to really, really network. Now I do. And it's been amazing. I've met so many wonderful people around the world. And with COVID, it's actually opened up a whole new avenue to speak to people and engage in interesting conversations. And so many people are doing so many wonderful things in this space, and in R&D and other, how we can reverse some of the damage that we've done in the environment and plastics and things like that. And those are all areas that I'm very interested in.
Fantastic. And you coming on LinkedIn Live with me, agreeing to be my guest, just shows that you're obviously super confident in terms of communication. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited that you've gone through that journey, and that you're you're here today speaking with me. So you talked about a few different projects. You said you had some on the go. You partner with other, other companies as well to get projects off the ground. Can you tell us about the first project that you launched and how you pulled that together? Who did you collaborate with? What was the project? And tell us a little bit about the outcomes.
Well, it's pretty amazing. I think being a female in this space is a really unique place to be. We have like an intuition in business. I think that a lot of us don't even realize. In my space, I was able, it was so funny. I was just with some friends I used to play soccer with over Christmas, and I decided to tell them I was going to embark on this new business. And one of the girls piped up and she said, "Oh, well, my uncle, he's been working in this business for 20 years. You should go talk to him." So I did. I went down to southern Alberta, which is super windy. You could barely walk to your car. And I'm like, this is a great space to be. If we can't build wind projects down here, I don't know what else, what else I could do. But anyway, so I collaborated with him. He had some interesting ideas about siting. So we drove around the province, picked some amazing sites for wind and solar developments. And so, yeah, so that's where I started. And then we started like pulling out maps, engaging with local community, signed some long-term agreements or short-term agreements to start and long-term further on. But, some really neat lease agreements with groups, and I spent way too much on lawyers to start, but, I ended up having a bunch of things that I could start, like the building blocks of a business that people really don't understand a lot of. If you're starting your own business, there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of things that you have to engage in you don't even realize. So having done that and having that behind me, it's interesting. You hit milestones. You don't always celebrate them as much as you should, but you know what? As you go along, you have to start celebrating.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, what you've just described, talking to someone and kind of the coincidence that her uncle has been in the business. I mean, for me, those are signs, those are signs that you're on the right
Oh,
track. And it's really exciting, isn't it? And I can imagine that when that happened, you thought, oh, amazing. I can start talking about my next project. I've got a little bit of support with it. I don't know a lot about wind energy, so it would be great if you can kind of touch on that first project. How was the commercial side of it? How did that kind of pan out, and what are some of the outcomes now from that first project?
well, I'll just go back a little bit because I'll just tell you that the intuition thing of it helped so much along the way. And my
Mm,
network, the way it built out was so unique. You meet people that are just game changing in the industry, and if you can connect with those people, it's just really wonderful. My first project was amazing. The group we started working with had a lot of land. They were, a Hutterite group in Alberta. They've been wonderful to work with. The project's still in development. We've had, challenges around regulatory and things like that, but it's still going ahead, and we're still moving with it, right? But you have to learn so many things in the wind industry. You have to learn how much interconnection you have, if
mm,
there's any environmental impacts in the area. You have to map all of those. You have to do stakeholder engagement. You have to learn about financials and how to do financial modeling over a long period life cycles of your project. So all of those things I had to learn, and now I've got them available to me. So, and I work with I wanted to keep my overhead low, of course, so I
mm.
work with consultants and subcontractors to help benefit my projects. But even then, I had to find the right groups to work with, and I'm sure I spent way too much money on consultants that I didn't need, right? But you learn about that, and trying to reduce that, those over expenditures or whatever is important.
Yeah.
So
So much learning, isn't it, from that first project? And so moving on from that project, what was your next project? What did you get into next?
so yeah, another one was another wind project down in southern Alberta. It was going to be a small wind project. We had done all of our studies, lots of success, and then we had one landowner who wasn't happy with it. So just earlier this year, we're now pivoting to another type of project, solar.
Mhm.
So I'm now getting into the solar space. So it's
Mm, mm.
really crazy, but you hit these big roadblocks and you have to work your way around them. And that's happened several times. Even just talking to people from the oil and gas industry in Alberta, we're very, very oil and gas centric here. It's supported a lot of people and families along the way, but also in the last 7 years, a lot of people lost their jobs. Like a quarter of our city lost their jobs within about 2 and 2.5 years. So
Wow.
it's been huge. And I really wanted to get into this industry also to help people find new jobs and
Mm,
diversify the economy. So that was huge too. Like that we're tackling a lot here, and we have to also educate people and help people understand why we're doing what we're doing,
mm.
and that we have to do this now, or we could all be in a lot of trouble. I mean,
Yeah.
BC, the province next to us, has just gone through some major flooding, which is very unusual. They're now going to be hit with another huge storm
Mm,
in Atlantic Canada. They just had a big storm hit them yesterday. Like they were talking, like they've taken out huge highway systems with these storms and mudslides and things that we've never ever seen before. And that's in Canada. And then you talk about, in 2018, I was down at the Caribbean Renewable Energy Forum in Miami, trying to see if there was a way to help, or an entry point for an SME into the Caribbean area, and it was really tough to hear, because of course that was just after a lot of the hurricanes ripped through Puerto Rico and stuff. And the reason we engaged is because we knew another group in Calgary who had actually taken some of the technology groups out of Puerto Rico after the big storms, and settled them in Calgary so that their businesses didn't collapse because they had
yeah.
no power. We've done project proposals down in like places like Costa Rica, big offshore wind project proposals. We've been exploring business in Brazil. So
Mm,
we've been doing a lot of outreach. We recently connected a developer to a land engager or whatever over in Spain. So we've had some really neat successes too, right?
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's not easy to build a project in an oil and gas centric province at all. It's a tough game. But
Yeah.
having started here and having done the tough stuff, I'm able to move into other sectors in the world, and where there may be better acceptance, or a push from like conferences like the COP26 that just concluded, and with these additional supports, there may be a better incentive to grow this industry. And that's a really neat thing about it too, is coming from oil and gas with all the ups and downs in the industry and things that we were out of our control. Now I'm in a huge growth industry. There's been committed trillions of dollars into this industry, and I really want to help people transition too. So that's part of my role up and coming, is to help to train people. I'm putting together a training program to teach them some of the things I've learned in business, and getting over their fears of career transition, and things like that. So it's really neat. It's really neat timing for all of this.
Yeah, so much opportunity there. And I've got a few questions to ask. And you touched on the oil and gas industry piece. So I'm going to start with a question that's come from Dandison. And he says, how do you see oil and gas industry in Canada in the next 5 to 10 years? Right. So what are some of your thoughts around the direction that the industry is going to take in Canada?
Well, I think there's more incentives right now. The federal government, of course, has incentivized a carbon levy. They call it a carbon tax. That's currently at $40 per ton for large emitters, large
Mhm.
industry emitters of GHGs and CO2s. And right now they've just been re-engaged here, the federal government. So they have another 4 years in office, and they're promising that tax is going to go up to $170 per ton. So it's going to grow by $10 a ton next year, and then following that, $15 per ton for the following 2 years. And that's the time we're hoping to actually reach COD on our project, so that we can incorporate some of that as an uptick for our economic model, to make sure we pay down our debt quickly and things like
Mhm.
that. But the challenge is that now the oil and gas prices are very high again. So it's both benefits and degrades from our industry. You know, when the gas prices are high, we potentially can get better prices for our projects and things like that. But but it's also challenged because the oil and gas industry is strengthened. So now they're drilling more. There's a huge commitment to drill a large number of wells again. So I think that it's not going to go away, and I don't expect it to. I think there has to be a balance across the economies to make sure that we start diversifying more, so that we have those engagements, and that So I don't think the oil and gas industry is going away. They've had some major setbacks, and some people obviously speaking against the environmental impact of oil and gas, but it's created a lot of jobs. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing today without my experience in oil and gas industry. But I think it's time to transition. I think it's time to look at new technologies and things like that have a lower impact. I think that's going to benefit us all. And if the science is what it is, if we don't do something today, we're going to be in a lot of trouble when our kids get older. So it's time for all of us to figure out a new way forward and make that commitment. Everybody can make a change at every level, and start supporting all the people, not just the rich people, but also the poor people who don't have a say. I worked in countries like Egypt and such, where you see oil and gas leaking into the desert. I've seen oil spills off of Oman and the Middle East, taking off on a flight, tankers, and you don't hear about a lot of those things that are going on in third world countries where people just don't have a say. And that's where I think it'd be nice to give them a voice. That's a big piece of what I'd love to see in my lifetime. I'm not sure if we'll get there, but yeah. So it's important to understand the impacts of all these industries and where we're going with them, and try and work and engage in technologies that might have a lower impact.
Yeah. I think
Sorry,
a
I'm really
lot of
passionate about this stuff.
of course, that's why you're on here. Um, I think when I attended some of the COP26 sessions that were held in Glasgow, what came through was definitely that passion to make a change. I think a lot of companies and individuals are seeking out what they can do to contribute. But I think up to this point, it hadn't been clear how people can actually make a measurable impact, how they can actually get involved. Unless you were a large corporation and you had, fat wallets, a lot of discussion around the commercial side of things, and the fact that renewables obviously is not where oil and gas is in terms of returns, when it comes to returns on investment and so on. Um, However, what I gained from that event was the discussion around the different industries that are having the most, I suppose, negative impact, and some of the technology and innovation that's coming out to help those sort of industries. So, for instance, there was a great company that was represented there called, I believe it's Origin, and they have some really cool technology where they can help industries that use lime or limestone, so like construction industries for instance, and they're able to remove the carbon from the substance so that when they are using it, it doesn't emit as much CO2 into the atmosphere, for instance. So things like that are not projects that you hear about, they're not companies that you hear about just off the street. And when I started hearing about some of those examples, I think it does make a measurable difference in people's minds. I think, okay, I can see that. I've got an idea actually of how we can maybe support industry A or industry Y, or how we can reduce our own emissions. And even personally, over the last year, I've been learning because I didn't know a lot about this. This climate change and so on, and we did recycle obviously at home and things like that. And I started learning more and more, and I'm doing a bit more just for myself and to contribute to that overall impact. And so I just wanted to hear from you, like, what are some things that people who don't have resources to go out and do the big things, what are some of the small things that people can do, as you said,
Yeah.
to make sure that we preserve the environment for the future generations? What are some little
Well,
things that we can be doing as individuals?
yeah. Well, it's really neat because I actually belong to a national organization called the Community, or sorry, the the Canadian Federation of University Women. And in the past, they got together in groups, they would collaborate, they would do studies and things like that in the early days of the organization. It's been around for 100 years now. But today they're starting to look more at like human rights and even looking at pesticides, how we can learn how to control them better so we don't interrupt some of the bee population. They've taken on a lot of different things, and one of their focuses this year is the environment. But through that group, I've learned a lot about what we can do better. But also, just recently, we had a speaker come to us, a fellow from Student Energy, and they're a really neat group out of Canada, and they've got a huge number of contacts around the world. And what they do is they actually help to teach people how to build small scale projects for their community, which is really neat. Like, I just love that when communities start taking advantage of some of these new technologies that can come in, be integrated easily into the community, and they offset some of their own carbon impact. For me, I love to do the big projects like that. That's an exciting space for me. But also, industry in general, like especially big industry, the big polluters, we have still over 4,000 massive major polluters in globally. They have to do some, they're already starting to change. But they have to do some significant engagements, significant, funding engagements, and not just buying projects that are already built, but they should have whole teams starting to make changes. I mean, there's some amazing stuff going on in the hydrogen space right now with our Atlantic Canada projects. We're trying to pair our wind projects with green hydrogen, which is a game changer for marine communities, for local, refineries and things like that. They can now start utilizing hydrogen instead of the heavy oils that they currently burn, and that goes into the air, right? So there's so many things that we can do at every level. I think once the governments start coming on board, if they meet those engagements that they've set at COP26, getting rid of coal burning facilities and replacing those with other facilities, all of that can be done today. There shouldn't be anything holding us up from making these changes. We just have to make them more quickly. And it's sparking a huge amount of engagement, industry, so it's a big deal right now. And we can all do better, make changes. We went from even driving a minivan that we drove for 10 years to now we have a hybrid vehicle. My husband wouldn't let me buy an EV yet because I do a lot of these long distance travels. He doesn't want me to get stuck on a highway somewhere. But but even then, the EV cars are so smart and they're so much fun to drive. They tell you exactly where the next plug-in station is. Like the mystery out of, the fear out of driving EV and things like that shouldn't be there anymore. Like that should be something of the past. They're slowly getting rid of cars that are heavy diesel and things like that. But we need a proper plan, like a very large scale plan to move to industries like hydrogen and such, and implement those quicker, because Europe is obviously way ahead of the game. Like, you guys are way ahead of where North America is. We always lag behind in these transitions because we're so oil and gas centric, right? But even, I worked with a port authority last year on a short-term engagement, and we explored a whole bunch of different industries: small modular reactors, LNG, waste to energy, capturing heat capture. There's the steel plants run on hydrogen are now actually they're already doing their pilots. They have full engagements of green hydrogen that you can move back to energy. You can there's several companies now have their pilots of generators that use 100% hydrogen. So there's so many neat economies coming out of this. They're testing trains on hydrogen. They're testing, ammonia and different that's more toxic. But there's different ways to do that in the marine sector. So you can still get across the ocean, but you're not polluting at the ports. You're not polluting in the air. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it's just a huge growth industry.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it. There's so much there that we can do and tap into and learn more about. If you're watching now or later and you've got some questions or comments about what we're discussing, feel free to put it in the box and we'll definitely get to it. I wanted to thank Dandison for his question earlier and thank you, Charlene, for responding to that. So when we look at milestones and things. In the UK, we've got our net zero targets, and there's certain things we want to achieve by 2050. What does that look like in Canada right now? What are some of the targets that the I don't know the governments are putting out, or is it business? Like, who is leading, and what are some of the um what are some of the targets that they're setting?
Well, well, of course, that $170 per ton carbon levy is going to be a huge a spark for the industry to either offset their carbon emissions with new industry or change the way they're doing things. Carbon capture is something that's coming into phase in Alberta to offset that. In Alberta here, we're shutting down all of our coal plants by 2023, which is way ahead of the game. That was
Yeah.
originally set to 2030. So I'm super proud of Alberta for doing that. Some communities aren't happy with that, but we're hoping that, through some of our work, we can help people transition to this new industry. But I think a lot of the engagements were just came out of the COP26. They now want to put a cap on emissions for the oil and gas industry. So it's changing, right? But it's also has to be something transitional so people aren't left behind. And I think
Mhm.
that's super important. It's a huge social aspect to all of this that, is something governments really have to understand, that they just can't put numbers in place and not make the proper plans for people to still have a livelihood. People still want to work. Some people who've been in industries for a long time don't see that pathway forward, but it's everybody can learn and everybody can and figure out a way that they can fit into a new economy, right?
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much. And the final point I wanted to definitely get out of you before we go is you talked a lot about helping people transition and that's part of your passion for doing what you're doing. Talk to us a little bit about what you would say to someone who is maybe in oil and gas or maybe in a different industry and is looking to move into renewables and be part of this journey. What are some pieces of advice that you would have for that person?
Oh, wow. This is great. I think that people have to, first of all, get over their fears of moving into new industry. They have to start doing some research on their own, which is where I
Mhm.
started in my transition. Learn a little bit about these industries, try and figure out where you might want to fit in, because you can use your strengths today, and everybody's capable of learning, and everybody can get excited about something new. So, but you have to know where your strengths are and where you want to fit in, and
Mhm.
that's part of what our program is going to be, is breaking those things down, giving people homework, helping them understand what all the opportunities that are available. There's a huge number of opportunities. It may not always be in your area, but these things are growing, and you can also spur some of these changes yourself, right? You can help lead your community to just do a little bit of something different, and that could lead to your own business or you helping other people. And I think that through the pandemic and everything else, I think we have to do more outreach. I think we have to help people. And if you can say, okay, well, I'm in this industry, I, push other industries to open up more jobs, because there's a ton of support right now from the different governments to help modify, like match wages and things like that. So we've actually engaged in some of those programs in our company, to we get wage matching for people who are helping in renewables.
Yeah.
Also across Canada, if big companies want to invest in renewable business, there's a huge tax break, 100% tax break for any investments, as long as those investments, I guess, are spent within the following year.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of places where you can get involved, locally or in your community to help make a huge difference. And it's just about learning. Like, the internet's available to so many people now. You just pick it up and figure out where you can fit in. But that's what we're going to help with too, is help people understand the different opportunities that are out there.
Fantastic. Listen, if you're watching now or you're watching this later and you'd like to get in touch with Charlene and just learn a bit more about the project she's working on, and if you're interested in transitioning and you're looking at renewables, she's more than happy to talk to you. So feel free to connect with her here on LinkedIn and take it from there. Thank you so much for joining me, Charlene, and I do
Well,
appreciate
thank
that it's been
you.
early in the morning for you and end of my day. It's actually dark here, even though it's
Oh,
like
it's dark
25
here
to 5.
too, but for other
And
reasons.
for all the reasons I know, it's just so bizarre. Thanks so much, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks everyone for listening. Bye
Thank you
now.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.